We're here with Chip Fudge in his garage, hanging out on his 1966 Datsun Roadster that he bought from Bring a Trailer. And we wanted to talk to Chip, who's quite an experienced vintage racer, races a whole bunch of places and a whole bunch of different things, open wheel and beautiful 60s GT cars, and obviously in Mexico with the La Carrera. Tell us about the Datsun and buying a vintage race car for your son, and how does one get into vintage racing?
Well, vintage racing always seems intimidating to people that have not done it. But once you get with a group like CVAR or SVRA or HMSA, it's amazing how helpful all of the other racers are. Most of the racing organizations, CSRG is another, and I'm members of all of these, will have driver school. They'll have members that will mentor a new driver, work you through getting your historic vintage racing license, and effectively, teach you the rules of what you need to know to go vintage racing.
So you go to a driving school, and then you figure out what group is running near where you are, what track you want to run, and then you actually contact that group and you find out they have a whole bunch of friendly folks who are ready to mentor you and sell you their old car.
That is exactly right. And you can make this thing as inexpensive or as expensive as you want to.
Great.
A $10,000 or $15,000 car set up properly, you will have just as much fun in as a several $100,000 car. You don't want to tear them up. You want to have a good time with the people you're racing with, and it's been incredible to get to know so many of the people in this in this subculture.
Now I know you're deeply devoted to another subculture that we share and are quite fond of. You sold a La Carrera car. You have a La Carrera car. You just had some unfortunate luck down in Chihuahua. Tell us what it's like to go to Mexico and race either in the Chihuahua or in the La Carrera. What's that all about?
Well, I tell people there are three different sets of people that like Mexican road racing, and that is either a former professional driver that was hired to drive a car. It's those people that are crazy enough to do it one time and they will never go back. And then there's those of us that love Mexican road racing, and we've made friends from all over the world and continue to go back. There is nothing like driving a car at speed on the open roads through the mountains of Mexico. And that's why I go back. I've been on the Chihuahua Express 11 times. I've done the Carrera Panamericana 12 times.
So tell us how you got involved with Bring a Trailer.
I had a couple of car friends that said, you got to look at this site because it's so much fun. And just being a gearhead that I am, I got on there one time, watched a few of the auctions, commented on a few of the cars that I knew about, learned a bunch about cars I didn't know anything about, and now I look at it every morning as I drink my coffee.
So is that before Bloomberg or after Bloomberg?
I don't watch Bloomberg. I'd rather look at cars.
All right, terrific. Tell us a little bit about the Studebaker that you sold on Bring a Trailer and that fantastic finish that it had.
Well, we have a mutual friend, as you know, Jerry Bledsoe,
Yep.
who built that car with his friend Frank Olivetti, and I have loved that car since he first built it. It was really just a special car. And Jerry and I have talked through the years about buying it and gone back and forth. I finally made the deal to buy the car, get it to Oklahoma City, and I felt too small for the car. And I thought, oh, this is nuts. And so I kept it a few months and decided to sell it. Long story short, 20 minutes before the auction was over, I was about $20,000 under what I had paid for the car, and I was on pins and needles, and at the end of the auction, I sold it for about $20,000 more than what I paid for it, which shocked me more than it did the buyer. At the end of the day, Mike Cristadello, the buyer of the car, and I have become good friends, talk all the time. I know he was on the Copper State Rally a few weeks ago, and that's sort of from a sidebar note, it connected one gearhead to another, and now he's planning on racing the car in Mexico with us, and we've become friends.
So you have a few other cars here, some of which we understand you may be sending to Bring a Trailer, so we're not going to sneak peek any of those, but tell us about what's next on your radar. What do you look for? What keeps you coming back to Bring a Trailer?
I'm always looking for another car. It's not so much the value of the cars for me. I look at the cars as works of art. I get as much joy driving a $15,000 car as I do driving a $1 million car. And I'm just a car guy. So ironically, the car you happen to be driving is a 73 Datsun 240Z. I've had a couple of them. I wish I'd never sold either one of them, and now I'm sort of looking for one of those. Missed a really good one last week. I missed a dual gear several years ago. I had bid on it, and it was a really exciting auction, and I made a bid, jumped on an airplane, flew to Colorado, got off the airplane, and sat where I had cell phone range to watch the end of the auction. My wife thought I was nuts, and that was a couple $100,000 car, and somebody I know got a really, really beautiful automobile.
Tell us a little bit about the car that's next to us here, this beautiful Aston Martin.
This is a clone of a 1961 Zagato-bodied Aston Martin, and the real Aston Martin's Zagatos there were only 19 of them. The last one sold for $15 million. Since it is a clone, it was not nearly that much money, but this was owned by a good friend of mine, Herb Wettinson, out of New York, raced at Lime Rock and Watkins Glen a number of times. I've always just admired the car. It's aluminum, not chrome. Some people think it's chrome, but it's polished aluminum. And the reason that it is not painted is paint adds an extra 80 to 100 pounds to a car. And Herb tried to make it as light as possible, and it's got a great high horsepower 6-cylinder Aston Martin motor. It handles really, really well, and it stops really well. And I will have my first race in it at Lime Rock and Watkins Glen this fall.
Fantastic. And where else will you campaign this car?
Primarily on the East Coast. I have a couple of cars I keep on the West Coast for Sears Point and Sonoma. I also run my Bizzarini out at the Historics in August. And I've got my Bring a Trailer ad on the back of my Bizzarini.
I saw that. Thank you.
Chris Vandergrift may be take it off if he sees it, but I proudly display my Bring a Trailer ad.
Good. We'll have another one for you if you take it off.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, Chip, we really appreciate you taking some time with us. Did I get it all, Sam?
I think so.
Thank you.
Back